Welcome to Golden Flame Stars. Have you ever watched a child actor and wondered how someone so young could possess a soul so deep? Long before they could even drive a car or understand the complexities of the world they were portraying, these legendary children delivered performances so powerful, so raw, that they left audiences completely haunted. Their unbelievable talent didn't just capture our admiration, it stole our hearts forever, preserving their innocence in the amber of cinema history. Behind the blinding glare of the Technicolor spotlights and the orchestrated magic of the studio system, a much darker question always lingered. How did their paths truly unfold when the cameras stopped rolling? Who managed to break the legendary Hollywood curse to keep shining in maturity? And who remains tragically trapped in the golden, suffocating memories of a bygone youth? To understand the true weight of this golden cage, we must step back into an era of unparalleled cinematic enchantment, a time when the silver screen promised pure escapism. In the mid-1960s, the world fell under the spell of a cinematic masterpiece that defined childhood for generations. We saw the arrival of two unforgettable children who captured the essence of pure, untouched wonder. Dotrice became an integral part of this movie magic, portraying Jane Banks in Mary Poppins. Her sweet, spirited performance, filled with genuine wide-eyed awe, helped elevate the film into an immortal classic. Alongside her was Matthew Garber, who won millions of hearts as her mischievous on-screen brother, Michael Banks. Together, they brought a warmth and a joyous, childlike energy that made the world believe in magic. For a brief moment, they were the most cherished children in the world, icons of an innocent era where the studio walls seemed to protect them from the harsh realities of the outer world. Yet, the illusion of Hollywood permanence is a fragile thing. While their performances remained deeply cherished by generations of viewers, the reality of what followed is a haunting tapestry of contrasting destinies. Dotrice eventually stepped away from the relentless machinery of Hollywood, choosing a quieter path, surviving the intense scrutiny to be remembered today as a lasting symbol of childhood innocence. But for her on-screen brother, Matthew Garber, the story took a far more mysterious and heartbreaking turn. His time in the spotlight was devastatingly brief, leaving behind a legacy frozen in time, a brilliant flash of light before an early, tragic twilight at the tender age of 21. This stark contrast between survival and sudden loss introduces the true, hidden drama that has always haunted the corridors of Tinseltown. The industry demands absolute perfection from its youngest souls, yet it rarely offers a safety net when the illusion begins to shatter. The transition from the saccharine sweetness of studio-controlled innocence to the raw, visceral reality of the changing cinematic landscape marked a major turning point in how child actors were utilized and perceived by the world. As the classic Hollywood studio system began to fracture, filmmakers began demanding an unprecedented level of emotional maturity from their youngest performers, pushing them into psychological territories that were previously untouched. No one exemplified this fierce new era better than Patty Duke, whose breakthrough performance as Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker left American audiences completely spellbound. Delivering a portrayal that was both physically exhausting and emotionally shattering, she tapped into a raw, feral energy that defied her tender years, capturing the profound isolation of a deaf-blind child with an extraordinary realism. Her powerful transformation earned her an Academy Award while she was still in her teens, a crowning achievement that cloaked the turbulent waters rising beneath the surface. Behind that perfect facade lay a demanding reality and hidden personal struggles that would test her resilience for decades to come, proving that the highest accolades could simultaneously build a monument and a prison. As television sets became the true focal point of the American household, child stars were suddenly thrust into the vanguard of social change, carrying societal expectations far heavier than any traditional script. In this era of rapid cultural evolution, a young boy named Mark Carpage stepped into the spotlight, breaking profound barriers as the lovable, quick-witted Corey Baker in the groundbreaking series Julia. With his innocent smile, effortless charm, and smart delivery, he did not just entertain. He became one of Hollywood's first truly influential black child actors, securing a monumental place in television history. Yet, living as a symbol of progress under the relentless gaze of millions comes with an invisible tax. The immense pressure of representing a cultural milestone at such a tender age meant navigating an industry that was still learning how to support its diverse young voices, a reality that eventually guided him in later years toward a much quieter, more private life far removed from the deafening applause of his youth. The path through the Hollywood landscape has always been a tightrope walk between typecasting and true artistic evolution, a challenge that required a rare kind of psychological fortitude. Veronica Cartwright demonstrated this endurance early on, drawing critical attention as Kathy Brenner in Alfred Hitchcock's chilling masterpiece The Birds. Working under the meticulous and demanding direction of the master of suspense, she absorbed the dark atmosphere of the set and used it to launch herself from a talented child actress into a formidable screen presence. While many of her peers found themselves discarded as they outgrew their childhood features, Cartwright defied the odds by continuously growing artistically, forging a long and deeply respected adult career in cinematic milestones like Alien and Invasion of the Body Snatchers, demonstrating that survival in Hollywood requires a willingness to look directly into the shadows. Sometimes those very shadows became the defining feature of a child star's legacy, blurring the lines between innocence and cinematic terror. At the mere age of 5, British child actor Harvey Stevens stepped in front of the cameras to embody pure, unadulterated malice as Damien in The Omen. With little more than cold, unblinking stares, an eerie silence, and a chilling smile that seemed to know the secrets of the universe, he created an archetype of horror that terrified audiences worldwide. The sheer brilliance of his performance earned him a prestigious Golden Globe nomination, a surreal achievement for a child who could barely read a script. But portraying the incarnation of evil before even entering elementary school is a heavy burden, and the intense, often superstitious public reaction that followed naturally led him to step away. Seeking the sanctuary of a quiet life, far from the haunting echoes of his definitive role, the emotional demands it placed on these young performers often mirrored the deepest fractures of contemporary society, requiring them to access grief and confusion far beyond their biological years. This was painfully evident when Justin Henry took on the role of the young son caught in the crossfire of a bitter parental divorce in Kramer vs. Kramer. His performance was a masterclass in natural emotion, capturing the raw, unscripted pain of a child watching his world fall apart with a devastating authenticity that moved audiences to tears. By channeling this profound vulnerability, he became the youngest Academy Award nominee in history, an honor that forever etched his name into the annals of the industry. Yet, achieving such a monumental peak at the very dawn of life meant that the subsequent journey would be an exercise in finding balance, leading him to transition into a more grounded existence as a businessman and occasional actor, keeping the roaring engines of Hollywood at a safe distance as the decades shifted into the rebellious, high-energy landscapes of the late 1970s and 1980s. A new breed of child star emerged, defined by grit, defiance, and an authentic streetwise attitude. Jackie Earle Haley captured this exact zeitgeist as the ultimate teen sensation Kelly Leak in The Bad News Bears. With his cool, anti-establishment posture and natural screen presence, he became an instant icon for a generation of youth who saw their own defiance reflected in his eyes. This striking early success laid a complex foundation. The industry often struggles to find roles for the rebellious youth as they age, leading to a prolonged absence from the mainstream spotlight. However, Haley's story became one of Hollywood's most remarkable testaments to endurance, culminating in a brilliant adult comeback that yielded an Oscar nomination for Little Children and an unforgettable turn as Rorschach in Watchmen. Proving that true talent can never be truly extinguished, simultaneously, the television landscape was radiating a bright, manicured charm through iconic sitcoms that defined the domestic experience of the era. Kim Fields became an absolute staple of American pop culture as the beloved Dorothy Tootie Ramsey in The Facts of Life. Sporting her signature braces, gliding through scenes on roller skates, and radiating an irresistible charm, she turned Tootie into one of the most memorable and enduring icons of her generation. Yet, behind the bright laugh tracks and the wholesome episodic resolutions lay the relentless, exhausting grind of weekly television production, a schedule that could easily overwhelm a young mind. Fields, however, possessed a rare creative resilience, translating her early exposure to the mechanisms of Hollywood into a multifaceted career, ultimately moving behind the camera to establish herself as a respected director, proving that the spotlight could be used as a stepping stone rather than a trap. This same era of youth culture gave rise to cinematic ensembles that defined the very concept of childhood camaraderie and adventure on the big screen. Sean Astin stepped into this world as Mikey Walsh, the fiercely determined and idealistic leader in the timeless pop culture classic The Goonies. His performance anchored the film's sense of high-stakes wonder, making audiences believe that a group of misfit kids could truly conquer any obstacle. Rather than fading into the background of nostalgic retrospective reels as so many of his contemporaries did, Astin leveraged that early artistic foundation into a sprawling, deeply respected adult career. From the emotional heights of Rudy to the monumental cinematic journey of The Lord of the Rings and the retro thrills of Stranger Things, he successfully rewrote the script for former child stars, eventually ascending to the presidency of SAG-AFTRA, channeling his lifelong understanding of the industry into a crusade to protect the performers who followed in his footsteps. The shimmering surface of Hollywood fame often conceals a predatory undercurrent, a whirlpool that can pull a young life down into the depths before they even realize the water has turned cold. As the 1980s gave way to a new decade, the world looked at the cast of Stand By Me as the definitive faces of American youth. Yet the most haunting member of that brotherhood was carrying a weight the public couldn't yet see. River Phoenix, who gave what many call the most emotionally mature performance of his generation as Chris Chambers, possessed a quiet intensity and a deep, soul-shattering vulnerability that made him a superstar. He was the golden boy, the activist, the sensitive soul, who seemed to bypass all the typical traps of teen stardom. But behind the closed doors of the industry's elite circles, the pressure to maintain that ethereal image while navigating the darker corners of the Hollywood nightlife began to take its toll. The industry, ever hungry for the next brilliant performance, often looked the other way, as its brightest young lights burned through their reserves. In a sudden, jarring moment that forever shattered the illusion of the immortal child star, River Phoenix was gone at just 23, leaving a legacy of what-ifs and an industry left to reckon with its own silence. This pattern of immense, crushing expectation was not limited to the gritty dramas of the 80s. It evolved and intensified as Hollywood reached a global scale never before seen. The children of the Harry Potter saga, led by Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson and Rupert Grint, were thrust into a level of scrutiny that was practically unprecedented. They didn't just grow up on camera, they grew up as the primary financial pillars of a multi-billion-dollar empire. For a decade, their lives were not their own, dictated by shooting schedules, international press tours, and the terrifying responsibility of being the living avatars of a generation's childhood dreams. While they are often celebrated today for surviving with their grace intact, the reality behind the scenes was one of immense psychological strain. Tom Felton, who brought the cold, sharp wit of Draco Malfoy to life, eventually spoke openly about the personal struggles and the long road to recovery that followed the franchise's end, highlighting the invisible scars left by a childhood spent in a fishbowl. The world saw the magic, but the young actors lived the isolation, often feeling like curiosities in a museum rather than children allowed to fail and grow in private. The drama of the child star often manifests in the terrifying distance between the character the public loves and the human being struggling for air. For Haley Joel Osment, the overnight sensation who delivered the haunting line that defined 1990s cinema in The Sixth Sense, early success was a mountain that proved difficult to climb down from. After being nominated for an Academy Award at such a tender age, the transition into adulthood was marked by the harsh reality of an industry that often doesn't know what to do with its child prodigies once they lose their youthful features. The setbacks were public and painful, involving legal troubles and personal struggles that the tabloids feasted upon with a cruel, relentless hunger. Society, which had so recently embraced him as a miracle of acting, was suddenly quick to judge the man who was merely trying to find his footing after a lifetime of professional scrutiny. This turning point, where the applause turns into a whisper of pity or a roar of judgment. is the moment many young stars find themselves completely abandoned by the system that once profited from their every smile. Now, where was this abandonment more evident than in the lives of those who defined the classic American sitcom? For Todd Bridges and Johnny Whittaker, the bright lights of the television set were eventually replaced by the harsh, fluorescent glare of courtrooms and rehabilitation centers. Todd Bridges, a household name through different strokes, found his adult life hijacked by addiction and legal turmoil, a spiral that became the stereotypical cautionary tale for a generation. Johnny Whittaker, the red-haired boy who brought so much joy to family affair, faced a devastating collapse into drug and alcohol dependency. Behind the cheerful theme songs and the canned laughter of the 1970s lay a reality where young actors were often treated as disposable commodities. When the ratings dropped or the shows ended, the support systems vanished, leaving these young men to navigate a world they were never prepared for. Their eventual, hard-fought recoveries are stories of immense personal strength. But they also serve as a stinging indictment of an industry that often provides fame without the armor of emotional guidance. The hidden drama of these lives often involves a physical or psychological price paid for the sake of a director's vision. Linda Blair's performance in The Exorcist remains a landmark in cinema, but the cost to her personal life was staggering. Beyond the physical rigors of the role, she was subjected to a level of public vitriol and religious fanaticism that no child should ever have to endure. She became a lightning rod for controversy, her young identity forever fused with the image of a demon-possessed girl, leading to a career of typecasting and the heavy burden of carrying a horror legacy she never asked for. Similarly, Noah Hathaway's time as the brave Atreyu in the never-ending story left him with more than just fame. The demanding physical nature of the role resulted in lasting injuries that changed the trajectory of his life, leading him to eventually turn his back on Hollywood entirely. These stories reveal an industry that often prioritized the shot over the child, leaving the performers to deal with the consequences long after the premiere. Perhaps the most heartbreaking turning point in this history of young fame is found in the story of Bobby Driscoll. Once one of Disney's brightest lights and the voice of the immortal Peter Pan, he found himself discarded by the studio the moment he entered adolescence. The transition from a beloved icon to an unemployed teenager was a shock his psyche could not withstand. The studios that once marketed his youthful charm stayed silent as he descended into poverty and addiction. He would eventually pass away alone in an abandoned building, an anonymous victim of the very system that had once made him king of the world. This ultimate scandal, the silence and the disposal of talent once its commercial value has waned, remains the darkest secret of the golden era. It is the story of those who were given the world before they knew how to hold it, and who were left to pick up the pieces of a life that felt like a dream they could never quite wake up from. The narrative of the child star does not always conclude with the closing of a stage door or the final strike of a clapperboard. For many, the most profound chapters began when they reclaimed their own names from the marquee. The true victory for several of these legendary figures lay in their ability to seek sanctuary in the mundane, turning their backs on the artificial glow of Hollywood to embrace lives of quiet, impactful service. There is a strange, poetic justice in the fact that Danny Lloyd, the boy, who once navigated the terrifying, blood-soaked corridors of the Overlook Hotel in The Shining, found his ultimate peace in the logic of science, building a respected life as a biology professor in Kentucky far away from the echoes of horror. Similarly, Carrie Henn, whose performance as Newt in Aliens remains one of the most iconic turns in sci-fi history, simply decided that she preferred a normal childhood over the machinery of fame. She walked away after her very first film, choosing instead to nurture the minds of children as an elementary school teacher, a role where the only audience that matters is the one sitting in her classroom. These transitions from screen legends to educators and public servants like Mike Vitar, who traded the cinematic baseball diamond of The Sandlot for the life-saving reality of the Los Angeles Fire Department, represent a rare and beautiful defiance of the Hollywood machine. In the boardrooms and lecture halls of the modern world, a new kind of legacy was being forged by those who once stood in the center of the frame. The industry often treats children as subjects to be managed, but several of these former idols chose to master the very systems that once governed them. Jeff Cohen, the boy forever remembered as Chunk in the Goonies, utilized the sharp mind behind the comedy to earn a law degree, eventually co-founding one of Beverly Hills' most prestigious entertainment law firms. He and Josh Suviano, who played the loyal Paul on The Wonder Years and now thrives as a successful corporate attorney, proved that the analytical skills required to navigate a set could be turned into a formidable professional edge. Even the world of high academia beckoned. Charlie Korsmo, the recognizable face from Hook, ascended from child stardom to become a professor of corporate law and finance at Case Western Reserve University. These individuals did not just survive their early fame, they outgrew it, proving that the intellectual life of a former star could be just as luminous as their time in front of the lens. The legacy of the television family remains a peculiar cornerstone of American nostalgia. Yet the reality for those who lived within those fictional households was often a struggle to separate the person from the archetype. For the cast of Little House on the Prairie, the sun-drenched fields of the frontier were replaced by a variety of paths that reflected the complexity of growing up in public. Alison Arngrim, who played the quintessential villain Nellie Oleson, transformed her legacy of being the girl everyone loved to hate into a powerful platform for advocacy and healing, using her voice to shine a light on childhood trauma. While some, like Jonathan Gilbert, chose to vanish into the private world of finance, others like Melissa Sue Anderson and the Greenbush twins remained tethered to the hearts of fans through their memories and occasional returns to the public eye. They carry the weight of being the nation's collective family, a burden also shared by Maureen McCormick. Her journey through the shadows of addiction and the suffocating perfection of her Marcia Brady image eventually led to a place of resilience and transparency, inspiring countless others with her path toward personal healing. As we look toward the present, the year 2026 finds some of our most beloved former stars pursuing passions that would have seemed unimaginable during their time on the red carpet. Frankie Muniz, once the face of a generation in Malcolm in the Middle, has fully traded the sitcom stage for the high-octane world of professional stock car racing, continuing his full-time journey in the NASCAR Truck Series with the same intensity he once brought to his acting. In the world of high fashion, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen have orchestrated one of the most successful second acts in history, transforming their childhood empire into a respected luxury powerhouse that commands the respect of the global elite. These are the stories of those who refused to be defined by the roles they played before they were old enough to vote, reinventing themselves with a grit that the industry rarely credits to its young. Yet, we must also pause to remember the souls who were not granted the luxury of a long second act. Those whose names are now etched in the annals of Hollywood tragedy. The brilliant flickering lights of Scotty Beckett, Brandon DeWilde, and Brad Renfro serve as somber reminders of the fragile bridge between childhood potential and adult reality. D. Wilde, who seemed destined for greatness after Shane, was taken by a sudden accident at 30, while Renfro's immense talent was swallowed by the same demons that have haunted the industry for a century. Their marks on history are defined by a haunting sense of unfinished business, a sharp contrast to the inspiring longevity of someone like Shirley Temple. Temple remains the gold standard of the former child star, having transitioned from the most famous child on earth to a dignified US ambassador and chief of protocol. Her life proved that the golden flame of stardom doesn't have to consume the person. It can be used to light the way toward a life of profound global contribution. From the classrooms of California to the diplomatic halls of Europe, the children who once shaped our dreams have left a legacy that is as diverse as the films that made them famous, reminding us that the most important role any of them ever played was simply the one of their own choosing. Answer Hollywood's golden flame. The hidden destinies and triumphs of 60-plus legendary child stars.